In this video, we're going to make our robot react to the touch sensor, or the little button sensor mounted on the front of your EV3. Now, if you look at the bottom status window here, it's clear that I have the touch sensor installed on port 1, because that's the touch sensor icon, and it'll actually show me the state. So right now it says 0, and if I were to press the button, it changes to 1, which signifies that the button is being pressed. Now, to actually control for the push button sensor, we need to find the wait block, which is in the yellow category, and it's the hourglass icon. If we drag that out here, and right now all I have in my program is I have my motor on for a set number of rotations. What I actually want this program to do is I want my motor to be running in a straight line until the button is pressed, and then I want my motors to turn off. So say, for example, I were to drive my EV3 into a wall, when the button is pushed, it would then stop. To do that, we actually need to say, okay, the motors are not on for rotations. Instead, we're going to change the mode to just on. So now the motors are on permanently in the 0% or the 0 straight direction at 50% power, and that's for B and C. And then we're actually going to click on the little hourglass or the little stopwatch icon here of our wait block. And we're going to say, instead of waiting for time, we're going to wait for the touch sensor. So if we just click on the hourglass icon, it should open up the menu, and you can actually select all of the different sensors for your EV3. So I'm going to scroll down to touch sensor. That will change the icon. So there's two different modes. There's the compare mode and the change mode. First, let's say compare. This allows you to enter the state for your button. Now, as I said earlier, by default, when the button is not being pressed, the state is 0. When the button is being pressed, the state is 1. So if I want my program to react when the button's pressed, I would want this number here, the state, to be 1, saying that the button was pushed, let's react and do something. And if you click on the state, you can actually change it. So if you say, for example, wanted your robot to react when the button was released or bumped, you can actually change that in this state value. Now, it's important here to make sure that the port's selected correctly. So again, down here in the status, you should see that the button is connected. In my scenario, it is connected to port 1. You can always change the port by simply clicking on the number in the top right corner. Then we have to stop our motors, because as of right now, these motors are still on. We haven't told the program what to do when the state changes to a 1. So I'm going to go back to my green selection, grab the dual motor block here, and we are actually going to turn off our motors after that state changed. So I'm going to select the mode button and select off. This program will have the motors on until the button value changes to 1 or pressed, and then turn the motors off. Now, what I want to address right now is, instead of saying the change, I want to say compare. So I'm going to again go back into touch sensor, and this time I'm going to say change. Now notice that instead of being able to select the state, there's no options here. That means that the robot's going to determine what the state is when it first starts, and the second that that changes, it will react. So if your robot starts with the button being pressed, the second the button is released, it would, in this scenario, stop the motor. If it starts with the button not being pressed, the second it is pressed, it would then stop the motor. Slightly different. You can't set a specific state value. It's just as soon as something changes, or it compares the change. But in the end, it does meet the same goal, where your programs can react to a button being pressed, released, or bumped.